Welcome back to my kitchen. I am feeling very much more myself this week because I finally got my contacts replaced. My daughter got a hold of my case and lost my last right contact. I did still have 3 left, but it's been like 2 months since I've been able to go without glasses. You haven't necessarily noticed that because I would take them off to film sometimes, but I am utterly blind without them, so I noticed. Anyway, today I'm going to be making ice cream. I'm going to make a classic ice cream recipe with one exception. I'm going to be using coconut milk instead of dairy milk because I'm making that one for a friend of mine. He has requested an amaretto ice cream with no dairy, with frozen fruit like folded into it. So there's sort of like streaks of fruit in it. So I'm going to teach you guys how to make that. So we're going to make a basic amaretto ice cream base first. What we need for our mise en place is amaretto, which I'm probably going to reduce, so there will still be some alcohol in the ice cream, but I very much want to burn off the raw alcohol flavor. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started because I'm going to need it to cool down before I incorporate it into the milk. So I've got this. I'm sorry that I'm not really giving you good measurements, but you basically are going to want like 2 ounces after it reduces, or a little less if you want a less strong flavor. So I'm going to do, I think this is about 3.5 ounces, but it depends on the alcohol you're cooking with because a lot of them are higher sugar. Like if you were to do a creme de menthe ice cream, for example, that would be a lot higher sugar, a lot less alcohol to burn off. So anyway, so I'm just going to put that on to start kind of burning off that alcohol week. And now my amaretto is already coming to a boil. Let's see if I can move my hand. So that won't take long to reduce down. It looks cool though. It smells great. For those of you not like in the know, amaretto is basically an almond alcohol, which means that I have decided, because I was given some carte blanche on how I make this ice cream as long as it's dairy free, I will be incorporating some sliced almonds in addition to the frozen fruit. So I have got 64 fluid ounces of coconut milk. Now, when you make an ice cream, typically you want something higher fat that resembles heavy cream. So I've also got a can of coconut cream. So I'm going to open that up. Ideally, for the perfect ratio, I would have probably several cans of coconut cream because you actually want almost more cream than milk. But my friend's just lucky to be getting this, right? So I'm going to use what I have on hand. I bought the milk for him and I have the coconut cream. I think that the coconut cream and coconut milk are going to taste exceptionally good with that amaretto and fruit. It's going to be this nice, super creamy, tropical, round, smooth flavor, and he gets to do real sugar. So that'll be about. So we'll start here for the moment. So I've got my amaretto reducing over here. I'm going to go ahead and add my cream to the bowl. It's okay that it's separated because I will be stirring it. Oh, and I'm going to take my earrings off and put it. I got these new earrings. Aren't they cute? Ah. They're made from bottle caps. I got them at the thrift shop for like $3, as long as you sanitize them with alcohol. They're perfectly safe to wear. I'm going to wash my hands. So we've got about 2 cups, or a cup and a half of the cream. And I have no use for this coconut milk, so I'm just going to try to make him the biggest batch that I can. I may reduce this down a little bit so that there's more fattiness to it. I will reduce this down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get it started. Basically, I'm going to bring it up to a boil, and then I'm going to let it kind of simmer for a while, just to get some of the water out and make sure that it's nice and thick and creamy. Okay, so I'm going to separate my eggs. After I reduce this, I'll probably have a little bit less than 9 cups of coconut milk. Which means that I'm going to want somewhere between 8 and 12 eggs. I should have enough eggs to do 12, but I'm not sure that it's entirely necessary. That would be a very rich custard, which would be ideal, but I don't know. I'm a little unsure of what my direction is here. Oops, just busted my yolk. You don't want your yolks to contaminate your whites if you intend to use the whites in a recipe that calls for whites. Other than, like, I suppose if you were making like a white cake, you could use contaminated whites because it'll only be a very, very, very trace amount. But if you wanted to make a meringue-based thing, which I'm thinking of saving these whites for an Italian buttercream for a birthday cake coming up. So I want them to be pretty pure. So I went ahead and moved the tainted whites out of the way. I can just add those to some scrambled eggs or something. My amaretto is getting nice and thick and shiny, so I think it is fully reduced. So I'm turning the heat off of that. I use whites a lot for an Italian meringue-based buttercream. Some people also use, for a Swiss meringue-based buttercream, which a lot of people find the Swiss meringue a simpler recipe. It is not quite as sturdy though, but it is very similar overall. It's just how you incorporate the sugar with the eggs. So I've got, that should be about 8 eggs. So I'm going to wash my hands. I will be adding to these whites as I make the other ice cream elements, ice cream bases, but I'll go ahead and put these in the fridge for now. Okay, so I've got my eggs. I'm going to go ahead and give my milk a little stir to make sure that it's not sticking to the bottom and burning. Now, because this is coconut milk instead of normal milk, I could probably just add my amaretto directly to the milk. But I'm going to go ahead and do it the way that I would with dairy milk so that you can learn how that method works. So I'm going to measure out my sugar now. Based on the amount of milk I have, which should be at about 8.5 cups, I'm going to do 2 cups of sugar. This is a large batch, but that is sort of, you know, I mean, he can buy ice cream, but, you know, if you have a pastry chef friend who's willing to make it for you, why would you? So we're going to go ahead and just stir this sugar into the yolks little by little. If you add sugar to yolks too quickly, it will actually chemically denature the proteins in eggs, meaning that you will cook the eggs just with the chemistry happening between the sugar and the proteins in the egg. which is why you have to stir constantly while you add it, and you want to add it pretty slowly. Now I feel like I could probably go with a little bit less sugar because I will be adding the amaretto. What, Jim? So I will probably actually do more like 1.5 cups of sugar. It's fine. Yeah, it's just constant shrieking that's hard. So I'm going to do about 1.5 cups of sugar. You can see how, like, when I'm kind of winging it, I sort of adjust the recipe as needed. But I'm going to go ahead, add another 1/2 cup of sugar to my yolks, stirring really well. Otherwise, you will end up with scrambled eggs in your ice cream base. And who wants scrambled egg ice cream? Not me. Although, you know, they have those sweet eggs at the, like when you order sushi, I don't remember what it's called. It's like tteokbokki eggs, I think is what it's called. I actually really enjoy the sweet scrambled eggs in that case, but I still wouldn't want it in my ice cream. I think it would be a weird texture. So I'm going to put this sugar away. I shouldn't eat it for the rest of the day. Now for incorporating the amaretto. Woo! It's hot. Okay. So I'm going to temper in the hot liquid because now that I've added the sugar, the egg yolks are a lot more stable, so they can take a little bit more stuff. But it would actually be best for me to go ahead and I'm just going to put this on that because it keeps spinning. And so we're just going to add a tiny bit at a time initially to get the yolks up to temperature and tempered in. That's what it means to temper, is to adjust one chemically less sturdy ingredient with another ingredient that could typically throw it off. So you want to do this even if you choose not to burn off some of that raw alcohol. You're still going to want to do this with a liqueur with this method because alcohol can also cook eggs. Basically, eggs are just the biggest wimps in the culinary world, but they're also like the most essential ingredient in almost every baked item. They're the hardest one to replace with a substitute in most cases, especially obviously in a custard like this. Although if you are into vegan alternatives, a lot of people will use chickpea juice because it does whip up like a meringue very nicely. Okay, so we've tempered in our amaretto. And in terms of safe to eat, these yolks are probably safe to eat now because they've been chemically cooked a little bit by the sugar, and then I've added the hot amaretto, which is both sugar and heat. So the bowl is now about room temperature because those eggs were cold. And now we just have to wait for the milk, and it's great for her coat. Meanwhile, our coconut milk is starting to simmer. I can hear it more than I can see it. As you can see, our milk has reached a rolling boil. So I'm just going to let it do that for a little bit longer so I can get some of that extra water out, and then we will start. Alright, so now I've reduced the milk down a little bit, the coconut milk, which is much easier to do than regular milk because it doesn't expand when it gets to the boiling the way that here I've got my Loch Ness Monster ladle, which was, I believe, another mother-in-law gift. So you get started on stirring again. And you're going to do the same method that I did with the amaretto. What you're trying to do is add enough milk to bring the eggs up to temperature without them seizing up and becoming firm. You want to keep them liquid while they cook. My toddler is in a phase where she shrieks and screams for fun without danger. Now, at this point, it's probably tempered in well enough, but I figure it never hurts to go ahead and just temper extra. Basically, I just feel the pot if it's all backwards, which I'm right-handed, so I'm just going to move my egg bowl to the other side. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to stir. And it would be better for me to have a rubber spatula, or I mean a rubber whisk for this, but I don't own one. I would like to get one. It's kind of a low priority when I already have damaged dishes, so. So ideally you wouldn't do this in a painted pot with a metal whisk, but we work with what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and stir all this in. I have to be careful. I'm going to turn this on a little. Oops, wrong one. You turned on very low. And I'm just going to stir it until the bubbles recede. So right now it's very frothy on top. I'm not sure if you can see. Let me move you closer. Right now it's very frothy on top. I'm going to just gently keep it moving so none of it gets burned on the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're just going to wait for it to thicken enough that these tiny, tiny bubbles all go away. So we're doing that over a very, very low heat, nice and slow while stirring. This is an essential part of a very delicate thing. It's the difference between a really delicious custard and a poorly made one. So you really do just have to have the patience to go at a low temperature, nice and slow, and to stand here and stir. You don't want to just leave it sitting, or you'll end up with curdled eggs on the bottom and nothing at the top. Here, I've been stirring for a little while over low heat, and as you can see, the bubbles are getting much smaller, but there is still a white film over the top. What we're looking for is for it to get even finer in the bubbles, and then it will start to recede. There will be a spot in the middle that starts to form that is like kind of a yellowish color from the custard. Well, it'll be that color, but it'll just sort of form on its own. And then we'll wait for it to go all the way out to the edges, and that is when we know that our custard base is finished. This is actually the case for any stirred custard. So if you are making an anglaise, which is almost exactly the same recipe, but it's just for like a custard sauce to put on like a bread pudding or something like that, you would do the same thing. If you were making a pastry cream, which is essentially a custard-based pudding, as opposed to a gelatin-based pudding, you would bring it to that point and then you would let it bubble until the bubbles pop and take a second to like go back down. So you'd start seeing big boiling bubbles in the whole custard as opposed to these tiny little baby bubbles on top. So as you can see, you're starting to see the color through this. Because this is coconut milk, there's a little bit more of a fattiness like building up at the top. So I'm not really going to wait much longer. I am going to just give it a little bit more time, but it's basically done. And will certainly churn well enough in an ice cream maker. There is a little bit of a fatty film buildup around the edges that I'm getting, I think just because, you know, coconut milk has a different kind of fat than dairy. But as you can see, that frothy bubbliness on top is almost completely gone now. I'm just going to continue stirring for just a few more minutes, and then I will be done and I will let it cool. You have to let it completely cool before you put it into your ice cream maker. Okay, so that base is done. I'm going to go ahead and pour it into a bowl so that I can reuse my pot. And I'm also going to taste it to see if it's okay. At this point, it's a very sturdy base, which means if I find that it needs more of anything, like for example, if it needs more amaretto, I can just reduce a little more amaretto and stir it in, and it won't harm the base because it can handle it now. All that sugar is so helpful for stabilizing it. Sam, you want to come do a taste test or no? Okay, so I'm going to taste, grab my baby spoons. I'm just going to taste my base, see if it's more amaretto or more coconut. Wow, it's really good, but I forgot how much I have not been eating sugar. That's very sweet. But it'll be good churned up. It's just sugar in the amaretto? I mean, there's sugar in all alcohols.
Oh yeah, alcohol is sugar, isn't it?
But it tastes really good. It is like a coconut almond. Woo! Making me drool. Okay. One dip.
Dip. So did you make that conventionally, for Dan?
Yeah, I made it correctly with sugar, so it's much sweeter.
Oh yeah, I was like, man, that's sweet.
Yeah, you get kind of used to the other kind.
I think it's good though. I think it helps balance out your palate so you can taste other things better too sometimes.
So the best thing to do to get an ice cream base down to churnable temperature is to put it in an ice bath, which I'm doing right now. There we go. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to return to it every now and then, add ice, stir it, and it'll come down way faster to temperature. So I'll show you what it looks like right there. I am thinking that it is a very sweet base with almost no, there's pretty much no liqueur flavor at all. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just stir in a little bit of straight amaretto to make sure that it still has that amaretto flavor, since that was what he requested. So I'm just going to do probably an ounce and a half. Stir that up. That'll have a little bit of that alcohol flavor now, but ultimately it's going to be very marginal. It's not going to get him buzzed or anything like that, because it's almost half a gallon of ice cream it's more than half a gallon of ice cream. I'm fine. It's not even a reaction. I know, but I just said, no!
What happened?
I dropped the container of egg whites on the floor, so I have a huge mess.
No.